Hello, everyone. Today we are very happy to have Keaton Roberts, the worship director for Dwelling Place Church. Welcome to PathForward, Keaton.
Thanks.
Nice to have you.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, so I just want to ask you first, for a lot of people, perhaps they don't really know what is actually a worship director and what's the job description like?
Well, the basic kind of like overlay of most churches, each church is going to have different needs. Like if it's an older traditional church, it's more about an organ or a choir, but our church is a little bit more contemporary. So the basic job description is to manage teams of musicians, schedule those musicians, choose songs for each service that we have, and make sure that those songs are lining up with the sermon that week and aiding in the entirety of worship. And then there's also just this backside of the more leadership development side of developing your musicians and their ability, whether that's skill, but also their hearts. And so there's a certain type of heart that we try to cultivate in those leading worship, which is a little harder for me to break down in simple words, but that's a major part of it as well.
Okay. To make the matter a little bit more complicated, sometimes I do see churches, they have actually not worship director, they have a worship pastor. So what is the difference if you put pastor after it?
Yeah, well, technically I am the worship pastor because I'm a licensed pastor. And so I can do weddings and funerals, but essentially the role of a pastor, it just kind of encourages a little less management. You still do all the management things, but it kind of raises the, your skill and ability because you've been trained like how to pastor people. And so it's a bit more of that like spiritual side of counseling people, whether they're on your worship teams or not. So there's responsibilities that you gain outside of just your music ministry. And so if that was like a funeral, like someone who we knew in our church had a family member pass away, like it would be a part of my responsibility more as the worship pastor to come alongside them in their grief and their mourning, and also to bring music that's going to really meet them where they're at and support them in that grieving process. And so there's a lot more of I'd say the counseling interpersonal side, and it definitely bleeds out of the ministry you're in charge of.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Very good description. Thank you. Because sometimes it is kind of confusing in that kind of area. How do you discover you have a gift in music and worship?
My mom has always been a super encourager. Some areas not so great. Of like, I pick a shirt to wear and she loves it. She says she loves it, and I look ridiculous. But in other ways, super helpful in terms of really encouraging me to pursue the things I like to do. And so, since I was a kid, I loved singing. Making noise is also just like all the time. But she liked to channel that stuff towards, like, I was a part of a small choir when I was a kid and loved that. Then I started doing a bit of like singing in like Christmas plays at my church and stuff, and I loved doing that. And then we moved to the Lower Mainland, and I took a little bit of maybe a hiatus. I just was so busy with trying to get used to this new situation we were living in, and so I didn't really have a lot of musical opportunities until closer to high school. I had a friend who was in the choir, and I actually sang a song to a girl I wanted to ask out to date me. And my friends were like, "Oh wow, you actually could really sing," and they pushed me, almost forced me to audition for worship at church to sing on the band at youth group, and I kind of got pulled in that way. And then I joined choir, vocal jazz, musical theater, anything that involved singing. I was a part of it in high school. And then the church really helped me develop and fan that into flames too.
Okay, so love is always the answer.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, we didn't work out, so thank goodness, because my wife's amazing. So
yes, you want to ask someone now, that's always effective. Okay,
unless you're really bad at singing.
Maybe not. Well, maybe the effort is appreciated.
That's true.
Okay, but anyway, you mentioned it a little bit. So you moved from somewhere to the Lower Mainland. In fact, you were born in Penticton. So what do you think is the difference between a small city like Penticton is not a town, I would say, it's kind of like Vernon, but not as big as Kelowna, I'm pretty sure.
Close.
Yeah, not even close. And So what is the difference between like a small city like Penticton and a metropolitan like Vancouver? What do you think?
Well, there's a lot of bonuses to being a small town, but I'm kind of going to focus more on the, the negatives, just because it was a big difference for me as a child. Like my first school I went to had 45 students from preschool till grade 6, and I was the only grade 6.
Wow.
And so they opened a grade 6 for me. And so there was no music programs other than, the compulsory, like everyone does choir together. But I didn't get to learn instruments. I didn't have choices between what stuff I wanted to do. There was no sports. So you really missed out on that. And then when I went to my second school in Penticton for grade 7, there was 100 students from preschool or kindergarten till grade 12. So another very small school with not a lot of options. They did have that Christmas play, which was really fun and I really enjoyed. But when I walked into Scott Creek Middle School just over here, and there was about 800 or 900 students between grades 6 and 8, it was overwhelming. And at the same time, I was like, didn't realize that people were able to go learn instruments for free. I was like, what? Like I wasn't allowed to do that back home, and could join sports teams for almost free. Maybe you just need to get cleats or something. Like could do all these extracurricular things that I just never had the opportunities to do. And so for me, it really allowed me to lean into and discover my gifts by trying out different sports and learning I really loved volleyball and that I liked rugby, but didn't really want to have my arms or broken or get a concussion. Like I cared a little more about, being good for math class the next day. But so big difference in what's available, but also, there's a lot of people. So for me, it was easier to make friends who I really valued and who would carry on to be long-term friends. But in the small town, if you don't like too many people in your class, you're kind of stuck with them. So it's a bit harder that way. So, and even church community was much more vast. I knew people from different towns because they would drive to this church, and so I just got to my eyes were opened to the world of different cultures, different people, and I loved it.
Okay. So how about people? I actually used to live in the interior too, a small town, half an hour away from Kamloops. I do find, at time, it could be a very dangerous thing if you live in a small town and then growing up, because it's like kind of boring. You can like kind of in touch with like kind of crazy things. But but it could be also wholesome too. You have good friends and like you hang out and stuff like that. So was that kind of like your similar experience, or like there's different?
I think for me, because I went to Christian schools, I was sheltered a little bit, which I'm thankful for, because talking to friends who went to the public schools, like it could be quite rough at times, because it can be boring. Like there's not as much opportunity for extracurriculars or things along those lines, at least especially in the schools I was at. Maybe the public school is a little different, but what ended up kind of happening is a lot of people would, try out drugs and, try alcohol, and you'd hear about these parties that kids are like falling out of trees and breaking their necks, and their life's changed permanently. And you're kind of just like in your bubble over at the Christian school, like nothing really bad happened today. Someone said a swear word. Oh my goodness, like, and then down at the high school, someone's got caught for drugs, and that definitely happened out here. But I think it was more, almost more common in the small town, because it was like, well, what else are we going to do? Let's go do some drugs, or it's like, let's play video games, and out here it was a bit more like my friends would say, let's take the SkyTrain and go to the mall downtown, or let's go to a concert that's $20, or a festival, or Playland, or like, there's just so many things within a literal bus ride. And in the Okanagan, your parents were comfortable with you walking around the whole town by yourself, but getting on a bus and going to Kelowna, now that was something different. But here it's get on a bus, go the same amount of time or more to get to Vancouver, and my parents are more comfortable, and so there was just more opportunity out here, and I found that super refreshing and joyful.
Yeah, like what you say, you went to a Christian school. Obviously, you also grow up in a Christian home. That's why your parents will put you there, although not always the case. But
I think those kids, they're like, go to the school, it'll fix you. It does not fix you.
But in your case, you did grow up in a Christian home, and you were living in a small city, like what we were describing. How does that change your value and your worldview in things?
Yeah, for me, I think living in a small town versus the big city, it made me be able to see the beauty of both and the pitfalls that can occur in both. And so for me, I will always love the Okanagan as a place to visit, as where my family lives. My parents moved back there recently. And so like it's like a home away from home. But coming to the Lower Mainland, I've fallen in love with the nature, the availability of things close. There's just something about this area of Canada that I am so struck by. And I think the values that created in me is, it's very interesting. My experience of the small town was not as open-doored as my experience in the bigger city. They both struggle with their ability to like come into my home. You know, there's some sort of maybe a shame, or like they don't want you to see the mess in their house or something. But when I hear about small towns, I think they're actually, Penticton's the weird middle size. But when I hear about really small towns, they're way more like open door, come on over neighbor, or they know their neighbors' names. And even in Penticton, I didn't experience that, like knowing the neighbors, being invited over to neighbors' houses, and coming out here and joining this church, a much bigger church. It was almost like there was more opportunity to get to know people who were willing to actually share their life with you. And so for me, that created a deep value of hospitality, and a desire to see others experience hospitality and desire to return hospitality to those around them. And I think experiencing the lack of that in a small town almost feels more isolating. And then experiencing a little bit more than that in the big city makes you go, there's so much opportunity for this. Like there's so many people who will drive 40, 30 minutes. In Penticton, if it's more than 10 minutes, they're not coming to your house for dinner. Like, you know, it's like, sorry, that's too far. But in Vancouver, it's like, oh, you live an hour away? Okay, I can come over, you know, next Saturday or something. And it just shows to me like the commitment is almost higher, and therefore people will make more room for it. So I highly value that.
But how does your upbringing affect how you view the world and your personal value? What do you think about that?
I think it could have, because Penticton is such like a bubble at times. I had met almost like no Asian people in my area, other than some like Indian people.
Yeah.
That's kind of the major other demographic in the Okanagan. And so I just didn't know there's like so many different cultures in Canada, because Penticton is so like isolated, and I am a quarter Japanese, and so I was always looking for Japanese people. Like, is there any here? Like, am I the only, smidge? And coming out here, I was so like joyfully overwhelmed, and so I think for me, it could have maybe created a sense of like, I think it created a deep sense of desire to know people and to know their life and their experiences, and their heritage, and not in a weird way, but in like what can I learn from your heritage that I've not seen? Show me the good, show me the bad, the ugly, all of it. I want to see that and experience it. Even the cuisine, I love food, so man, I came out here, I'm like, Korean food, what is that? It is so good. What have I been missing? Like, and so it's been a joy. But I think it created the deepest thing, the most overarching thing, is a deep curiosity and love for people, and a desire to have relationship.
But do you find this is who you are, or is just because of the surrounding, or like you're just always curious you want to know more about people, you want to learn more about people? Is it something that is innate in you feel?
I think there's a part of that, but I think that could have been either inspired or pushed the other way. Like it's like that nature and nurture. I think it was in me. I'm always been. My parents are very extroverted. They're very generous people. They love people like deeply. Yeah. But I think the part that I hadn't experienced in the small town was the like really like seeing each other's lives. Rather than just like here's a generous offering, or hey, we had a fun hangout. but like doing life together and committing to see each other grow and to even have hard conversations, you know, like, hey, the way you spoke to me, it hurt my feelings. Like I didn't grow up in a city that really allowed for those types of conversations. Okay. I think because it's so small town, there was a lot of like, I don't want to make you mad. I'm going to see you at Walmart. Like, you know, there's this bit of this tentativeness to have really raw, honest conversations that, again, when I came out here and I was able to experience those, I went, oh, wow, this is hard, but produces such growth and beauty and actually draws people closer together. It's something I made like a point to continue to build my life around. So I think a lot of values from my upbringing, it's really, to me, I think my values were either solidified or I found new values in the moving process. As hard as it was, like leaving your whole family aside, coming to a new place where you know nothing about the culture, you know, I'd never met someone who did drugs, and then I did in grade 8, and I was like, what the heck? Like, but instead of trying to hide from them or be afraid of them, for some reason, I was like, I want to like know why. Why are they living this lifestyle? And so that curiosity that was birthed in me from not maybe meeting a lot of the being sheltered, I think that shelteredness coming into the like, whoa, there's a whole world I haven't seen. Some people do the thing where they go and they chase that world and they become a part of that world because they're like, well, they're enjoying the drugs. I should go enjoy the drugs. But instead for me, it created like what is unfulfilled in you that you go to drugs for that I don't feel that pull towards. And I think really that comes, I would almost say it's the positive that came from being sheltered, but not everyone has that experience.
But can you expand on it a little bit? What do you mean, like the positivity out of like because you were so sheltered? What do you mean by that?
I think usually, like, I mean, I had this because we were in a small town, and because I was in tiny Christian schools, I didn't really see the dark side of teenagehood or until we moved out here. The difficulties that can come from people's lives. I was unaware that people could come from broken homes, really. I hadn't really known too many people who came from broken homes or they kept it, you know, or it was just normal. I had a best friend who had a single mom. I just didn't know that there was anything wrong with that. I was just like, I don't know where the dad is. Like, maybe it just didn't work out, but I just didn't. I had like this strange ignorance is bliss type of ideal. And so I think that's probably personality more than anything. And a bit of like my parents' just optimistic kind of view in life. But I think being in that small town, and we moved eventually out into the like hills, like the woods, 10 acres of land.
Oh, wow.
And I'm a very extroverted person. Like I value and desire deep relationship. And so for me to be outside of the town where no one's driving to come see us, like no birthday parties at my house, like I had to learn also some independence, which I think was actually helpful for me. I think I could have ended up being too codependent on people. But because I was like, okay, I have no friends. They literally live in town. They're not driving here. My mom doesn't want to drive me into town for a play date. So I guess I'm going to drive the quad around our property and shoot the paintball gun at my brother and, you know, do the kind of wild living up in the woods type of stuff. Which was, I think, really healthy for our growth as kids. And so,
that's true.
Yeah, I had a really interesting childhood. Not a lot of people experience that, but I do think it formed me for the better.
That's true though. Actually, it's a bit more healthy. But when you moved to Vancouver, a big city, you went to a public school, so no longer a Christian school. And how did you feel about all these changes?
The first thing I remember is I was mad that my mom made me walk to school. I never had to walk to school because we lived either 20 minutes outside town or we were too young to walk to school. But I was in grade 8, and so my mom's like, take the bus or walk, because she also had my younger brother. He was like a new baby, so she's kind of like, oh, if I have to take you guys to school, I have to load him up and do all and we were 15-20 minutes away from our school. It was not a long walk, but I just remember being so mad because we were on a hill, and so walking to school was pretty good. At the end of the day, coming up that hill, I was like, why? Like, if it would have rained and the trees were all wet, I would like push my hair through the trees to like make my mom think I'm soaking wet, so she feels bad. Like, I come home with like soaking wet hair, I'd be like, look how wet it was out there. You made me walk in this. I still walk to school all the time.
This episode is brought to you by JW Music Studio. JW Music Studio is currently looking for piano and guitar teacher. If you're eager to find effective way to instruct private and group lessons, if you also passionately care about a student's personal and musical journey, then you're the one. Please email your resume to jnwmusic@yahoo.ca. We're looking forward to hear from you.
So at public school, though, it was a big shift for me. Again, all of my school in the private schools was in one classroom, mostly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In public schools, it was like this class for this class for this. I had different teachers. I had not experienced that. The most I ever had was 2 teachers back in private school, but this was like almost every subject, like had another teacher. Mm-hmm. And so in grade 9, I actually ended up failing English 9, which is I'm actually quite good at English. So, but the reason I was so overwhelmed by high school. So middle school was hard, but it wasn't like terrible. I met a small group of friends they called themselves the Loner Corner, and they were all like kind of goth or scene. You know, they wore the black makeup and nails painted, and I was just like, you know, preppy Christian kid that like didn't have any friends, but they would be friends with me, and so I was just like, okay, like you guys will be friends with me. Yeah. But then getting to grade 9, they do a lot of things where your schedule will actually change throughout the week. So Monday you have English, and then next Monday you have gym instead. And I could not. My brain couldn't handle that type of schedule shifting. So I would go to gym class, thinking I have gym class, but I don't know anyone, so I don't recognize anybody. And I'm standing, and I'm like, and I had gym teachers be like, "You're not in my class," and I'd be like, "Oh my goodness, I'm supposed to be in English," and I'd run to English class in my gym clothes, and I'm like, "I'm so sorry, I went to gym," and the English teacher was not kind or forgiving. Yeah, she only taught at our school for 1 year, and it was unfortunately my year. And I couldn't understand like the due dates because the days would shift. So I'm like, wait, was the homework due today or was it due? And I just didn't know because the schedule would change. And so I ended up failing English and almost failing math, but that's just because I'm bad at math. And the Christian school's curriculum I went to wasn't the highest level. So I was a bit behind in certain subjects, especially French. So I went to remedial school, like summer school for kids who fail classes.
To make up the time.
Yeah, and I would say it scared me straight because in summer school, the homework was so easy. Really? I was sitting there like, what? Like, we're learning basic grammar here? Like, I was like, what is going on? And I got like a 98% or whatever in the class. But my only friends, again, were a couple of kids I recognized from my high school who loved to smoke weed, and they were like, you wanna come, hang out in the forest with us after class? I'm like, no, I'm good. But sometimes I would hang out with them before class, and they would smoke cigarettes, and I would just talk to them and be like, why? And please don't blow that in my face, it's disgusting. But like, I had this I don't know, a non-judgmental, just naturally, because I just never engaged with people who did this kind of stuff. So I was kind of like curious, like, so why do you smoke that disgusting stuff? Like, and I actually really learned a lot of compassion for, like hearing their stories, and it was like a joy to actually get to walk alongside them. And at the same time, I was like, okay, that was a little scary. Like some kids tried to fight each other in the class. The RCMP had to be called, and I'm just like, I don't belong in this class. Like, I'm gonna pass next year. I'm not gonna fail anything, and I never failed another class in high school, and I ended up graduating with honors. So,
wow.
It was a bit of scared straight moment, but it also like I learned like how to cope with that shift, and I found out as an adult that I have ADHD, and so I think that contributed to my inability to understand the scheduling changes and all of that.
Okay.
But I learned how to grow and cope in that. So I think high school, especially switching to a huge high school, it literally forced me to grow. Whereas in the smaller town, maybe could have floated by a little bit. And then when I graduated, I would have had a very rude awakening as an adult. And so
that's true.
I actually really think that move was the best thing for me.
Okay. So you met a lot of interesting people, obviously a lot of interesting experience because of like all the changes, from a small town, come to a big city. But what did you learn about yourself during the middle and high school year?
I learned that I really, I really value people. My wife actually just said this the other day when we were talking to someone else about how we kind of met and started, talking to each other. But she's like, he was just unashamed, and he had so many friends. Like everyone was his friend, even if they didn't know they were his friend. He would treat them like his friend. High school was a season that galvanized, like reinforced my real devotion to God, and also my unwillingness to be anything but myself. I think I've always had a bit of a people-pleasing bend to it, but it has to be, I've always decided like, well, no, I have to be me. Even like, yes, I might work really hard and burn myself out because I'm trying to help others, but that is part of who my character is. It's not, I want to help them out. Obviously, I've grown better boundaries around that, but things like I would run our school's prayer group, and when the principal kicked us out of the classroom because he said our group wasn't inclusive enough, even though I said it to his face, like, anyone can come pray. I don't care if you're praying to Allah or if you're meditating to Buddha, but I'm leading the group. I'm going to close in Jesus' name, amen. Like that's how we're going to roll, unless someone else wants to lead the group. But he said, no, you're not allowed to have a religious group. And so I said, all right, I'm going to pray in the hallway then. And he was like, what? And I'm like, I'm going to sit in the hallway and pray. Now you can't stop me. I'm just going to do it. And so I would have kids literally step over me to get to their, band room or whatever. And I had a small group of friends, and we would get together and pray in the mornings. And it really created in me this, I would say it's like a confidence, but in the things I really believe in, not in like a rude way. I think sometimes you meet people who are really confident and they kind of like think they're better than you. Mine wasn't. It was a confidence in like, I believe this is right. You don't have to. I'm not going to try and convince you, but I'm going to sit here and pray because I think that's important to do. I'm going to pray for the school. I'm going to pray for anyone who's here and they have prayer requests. And it gave me a real confidence to like become a leader. I think high school was like, it really refined me because it pushed me so hard, but it really made me the leader that I am today, whether that was at church or at school. So I think it was the best.
So do you think it is more like searching for your identity, and then the high school and middle school year really help you to kind of understand and accept who you are? Do you think that is what it is?
I think partially. I think one of the things is I never really sought to belong to a certain group. I didn't really fall into any of the stereotypes. I didn't want to. Like I enjoyed sports. So I would play sports. Like I did wrestling the first year. I did volleyball for a few years, and I was pretty good at it because I enjoyed those things. I wasn't like I am a volleyball player, And then my whole life is riding on this volleyball scholarship. I was just like, this is fun. Like I had no pressure. And then musical theater and choir and all those things came up, and I was like, this is really fun too. And I get an A basically just for showing up. That's how I got honors, y'all. With distinction. I did a lot of extracurriculars for grades. but I discovered just like the joy of being goofy and not being ashamed and acting and making mistakes, but how you can turn those mistakes into something good. In choir, it was a lot of learning how to actually listen to those around you and to match them, or to sing the part you're supposed to sing that is complimenting them. But the whole point is that you're trying to hear and to blend with what's going on around you, not be this loud that like jumps through or cuts through in a way that's not pleasing. And so, yeah, I learned a lot of unique skills, and I didn't try to be a jock. I didn't try to be popular. But yes, I once dated a very popular girl in our school, and everyone was like, what the heck? Like even my wife was like, I could not believe you were dating her. And I was like, I shot my shot. It worked out. I don't know what to say. Like, and then she broke my heart, and I was like, all right, that's fine. Like, that formed me as well. And so I think I wasn't trying to be anything other than me. And that included, like, I wasn't finding my identity in academics. I wasn't finding my identity in extracurriculars or which type of friends I had. I was just like, you're fun. I enjoy you. Let's be friends. Like, oh, you play guitar. Would you play with me at this festival if I sing? Then I made a good friend, and he would play really great guitar, and I would sing. And we would do that all the time. We actually won the talent show 3 times. Like, really? Because he would play such good guitar. He was amazing at guitar. And I would sing, and we would do these fun versions of songs. And but I wasn't trying to win the talent show. I was just like, this is fun. Might win $100. That's a lot of money to me. Like, but I really think when people, and I would meet a lot of people who'd be so stressed because they're already like, I'm going to be a doctor. Like, so I have to get straight A's and there's this immense weight. Or I'm going to be a pro basketball player. And then there's this immense weight and pressure, and their identity was really found in what they did, not who they were. And maybe it's because my parents raised me the way they raised me without that pressure. My mom really is like, be who you are, not what you do. And I found a lot of freedom in that. And then, I mean, so then it was good when I left high school and I tried something and didn't work out. And I was like, okay, I guess God's inviting me in a different direction. And I had this ability to pivot from something that could feel like a lot of failure and take it as a learning opportunity. So I would say, my personality really had a lot of space to grow and learn who I was.
Yeah. And I think I would want to talk about like those failure a little bit later on as we go on a little bit. You sense a calling to work in the church, but it is a very long process, I know, until you actually have received an offer as a worship leader or worship director. First of all, just want to talk about it first. Like, how did you know about this calling? How did you sense this calling?
Yeah, so for me, some people, they go to school and they're like, I'm going to be a pastor. And they go to 4 years of school, they get the degree, and then they try and get a job. That wasn't my journey. My journey was, I absolutely adore being at church. So I was like the only kid who went, I was like 16 or 15, and I would show up to men's breakfast, and everyone has white hair. And then there's just this kid that sits at a table. But for me, that was an amazing time because I'm hearing men in their 60s, their 50s saying, I still struggle with this. And I'm like, you guys still struggle with this? Like, good to know, I'm 15, so that means I'm not horrible, Like, I learned that, like, life is hard, and but it really gave me a heart for the church. So I fell in love with the church. And by the church, I don't mean the building. I mean God's people, the family of Christ. And yes, it happened a lot in a building, and I loved that. I loved coming to the building and praying with other people and being on. So again, I started going to Northside in grade 9, sort of grade 8, but I went to their summer camp in grade 9. And every year at camp, after camp, they give you this little card to like read over and pray about. And it says like, basically like, did you give your life to Jesus this week? Did you have an impactful encounter with God? Do you feel called to be a missionary, like go overseas and serve people in different countries? Or do you feel called to full-time ministry or ministry, essentially, like working in the church or in a non-for-profit organization, in that kind of vein? And every year I pray, and I would always, for some reason, check the ministry box. I would usually check the Holy Spirit one too, I had a powerful encounter with God, check. But no one in my family had ever to my knowledge at this time, become a pastor. So I had no real like picture for like, what does this look like? Like, I don't know. Like, so I would just check yes, and I wouldn't think anything about it. Then the next year camp would roll around. I would forget what I answered the year before. I'd just check yes again. And it was probably about grade 11 or 12, probably grade 11, where I started to go, this is a pattern in my life. But I never thought anyone would pay me to do what I loved to do for free. And so basically I graduated high school and I started pursuing different jobs, but all the while in the back of my mind, I was just so enwrapped in worship leading, in worship songs, worship music. It was just very much the soundtrack of my life. And so I was constantly serving at the church, always there, because I loved it. Going to men's retreats, leading the music or helping lead the music. I would serve on PowerPoint. I would serve downstairs with the kids. Basically, if there was an opportunity to serve, I was probably there. And so I think at some point when I was offered the position, I was kind of shocked because I never thought someone would pay me to do what I just would love to do and would do for free. And so in that moment, suddenly I remembered all the times where I felt the leaning, but didn't know how to get there. I had no roadmap of well, what does it look like to do this? And does that mean I should pursue it, or does that mean I should just wait until God brings it to me? And so, yeah, as I said, I didn't chase after it as a job. I just kept serving with open hands, and it kind of arrived in a time where I had heard a couple of no's in other career directions. I was young, and we were married, but we were very poor and like living in my parents' basement suite. And Gabrielle was still at school, getting her accounting degree, and I was like, how do I pay the bills, And so it was beautiful because it wasn't really I wasn't chasing it. It just came to me, and I realized, yes, this is God's invitation. And when I stepped through that door, it was perfectly correct.
So you just see a pattern, basically. That's what it is. And you also see that you also have a heart for the people of the church, basically, not the building, but like the people of the church, and you like to serve and all of that, and then you see this pattern kind of emerge, and then you kind of see. But we will talk about that a little bit more. So in 2016, you got married. How old were you when you got married?
So we got engaged when I was 18 and she was 19, and then we got married when she was 20 and I was 19.
Okay.
So we were youngsters, and I don't prescribe this to anyone. I don't say to people, yeah, you have to get married at 19. Get as married as fast as you can, because I don't think it's right for most people, but it was perfect for us. And now it's 9. I think this is our 9th year, 2016 till now. Yeah, it's our 9th year. And we're so happy. Like, we would never have wished we'd done it any different way.
Okay.
So for us, it was perfect.
This episode is brought to you by JW Music Studio. We offer piano and guitar lesson in both group and private setting. Group lesson is a great way to ignite a student's musical interest. It offers engaging activities that will reinforce specific skill sets. Ensemble playing will strengthen their rhythmic feeling and listening abilities. Most of all, they will experience the joy of making music with others. Contact us to find out our available schedule. So you did mention that was a very stressful year in finance for obvious reason, for career and life in general. I think, can you expand a little bit more, because how does that all come into one place? So how did all this challenge coming together?
Yeah, getting married young comes with its complications of you combine two lives, and then you go, we really don't have a lot of money. We we don't have a ton of finances to like set up our separate lives, from our families, from our parents. And again, my parents were super gracious to let us live in their basement suite for free. But we still, paid for food and, did all that stuff ourselves, as well as, again, paying for my wife to go through school. And so that first year was really hard because our finances were really tight, yet we still both wanted to be generous. So like giving to the church, giving to non-for-profit things that involved like children or food banks and that kind of stuff. And we were also serving the church a lot. And even our free time was basically at the church. And so that first year, finances were tight. So I'm trying to work any job I can that will pay some of the bills. And my wife's working 1 day a week while she's in full-time school, or 2 days a week. And so we're relying kind of on student loans to make it through there, living very frugally. I learned how to cook a lot of pasta. But there was also the sense of like purpose in what we were doing. And so although I hadn't found like my career, I had this deep sense of purpose to supporting my family and still being heavily involved at church and in ministry. And so the difficulties were definitely the stress around just not feeling like we don't have enough, or feeling like we're not gonna. But what that did and created in us was a heavy and deep reliance on God, a deep trust of God, and also a deep trust with one another. We were desperately needing to learn how to communicate, and that first year was either communicate or scream at each other. So I guess that's a form of communication, but we really learned really quickly how to have healthy dialogue and communicate. Like, hey, I'm feeling like we haven't hung out. Like, can we not go to that optional event, whether it was at church or with friends? Can we just like spend time together? And that was really helpful for us. And actually, I think, again, the struggle, the difficulty, it refined us. It made us not take what we now have for granted and recognize that we could lose it all, and we'll be fine. We'll be okay. And so, yeah, tough year. Not a lot of like, I tried to get high-paying jobs that just weren't it. So I had to do things I hated, like landscaping, and which is fine in the day, but when it's pouring rain, you're miserable. And so, those types of jobs. And then I finally got a job at a cafe, which I loved, and it paid well, and I became a supervisor, and so that was a great season. But it was definitely a really tough, like, first year until we moved out, and my parents helped us put the down payment on our condo, which we're so grateful for. And we paid them back once we sold, but that was a really refining year.
From 2016 to 19, you actually pursued to be a nurse. You tried to be nursing. You tried to be police. You tried policing. And you also tried a 911 responder, was it?
Yeah.
Emergency responder or something. But all of them didn't work out, did not come to fruition. Can you explain what happened? Because there's a lot of things. So in the nursing, what happened in the nursing?
So nursing was like in high school, like people are talking about, I'm going to be a physiotherapist, I'm going to be a whatever. And I was like, what do I want to be? And I was like, well, I love people. I don't want to be like sitting in an office all day. And like, I want to be up and about. And I was like, I'm really interested in medical things. I always knew weird facts. I was that kid who was like, oh, did you know, the strongest muscle in your body, like I was always that. And people were like, why do you know that? I'm like, I don't know. I heard it once and I memorized it. So I figured that was a good route to go. But I knew that I couldn't do just 4 years of school straight up. And the schooling is required is like, you have to do a lot of prerequisite courses. And so I was like, okay, well, is there any programs I could do that don't require those prereqs? And I tried doing Chemistry 12, and after a week and failing the first quiz like miserably because it was so math oriented, Chemistry 12. I walked up to my chem teacher and I went, this isn't going to work. I'm going to drop this course. And she went, it's for the best. Like, she knew. She was like, you're not going to do this well. She also had the most monotone voice ever, and she put me to sleep almost every class. Like, I couldn't stay awake. But she was a nice teacher. So I found a program in the Fraser Valley that if you did volunteer hours, you could apply and get in without the prerequisites, like of Chemistry 12 and calculus, pre-calc. And I'm like, why do I need this for nursing? This doesn't make any sense. And so I volunteered over 100 hours at Chorney Alzheimer's Center, which was a beautiful place, and the people were wonderful. And I would spend time visiting with guests, like with residents there. I would build rapport and relationship, even if they didn't remember me the next day. I would play hymns for them. I would like lead guitar and sing hymns for their kind of their church service type thing. And you would see nonverbal people who don't speak anymore sing. And it was the craziest, most cool experience of my life. And I just really enjoyed it. I've always loved old people too. Something about them. I think they're so sweet and cute. Some people are scared of old people. I was a kid going to the old folk home to volunteer as like a little kid. And loving it. But so that didn't work out. When I applied to the university, they said, why don't you take some prerequisites? And I was like, guys, this is why. I just volunteered for over 100 hours. Like you guys asked for like 20 or 30, and I've done quadruple that to look good. And it didn't work out. So I went, okay. It's like a closed door. I view like closed or open door. So I was like, okay, God, this is a closed door. And I felt like it was, because I looked into some other programs and it wasn't right for our season. And I knew we were going to get married. Like, I think we graduated high school and we got engaged like a year later, I think. So I was like, I can't waste time. And so then I started looking for higher paying jobs. And that's where things like, I was thinking, okay, if nursing didn't work out, like maybe I can do policing. And so I started training for policing and doing, physical training. And my dad and brother are cops. My brother's younger than me, so he wasn't a cop then, but my father was and loved it. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll try that. And I ended up getting an ACL injury, or a meniscus, strain that was pretty bad. I was on crutches for a while. And I just gained a lot of weight on that time because I was eating, because I was working out a lot. And then I couldn't walk. So I gained a lot of weight because I kept eating like I was working out. And so I was like, shoot, this is going to put me back like quite a while. I'm going to have to slowly rehab the knee, and then I'm going to have to re-lose the weight. And so in the meantime, I'm like, what am I going to do? So I started going to Douglas, taking some courses here and there, a college here locally, because policing requires at least 30 credits. So I was like, I'll do this, and maybe I'll pivot back to nursing if that works, but we'll see. So I picked courses I just liked, like psychology, anthropology, different things like that. And then after kind of getting that done, we got married. I started working at the cafe. And first year of marriage, I'm sitting at home. I'm still working at the cafe. It's a long drive from Maple Ridge to Port Moody. A lot of early mornings. And I'm like, man, what could I do that would pay better and give me a bit more free time? And I thought of Ecom 911 because it's still emergency situations, which I'm generally quite good in. It's helping people. Every call is going to be different. So I was like, that could be really cool. And so I started the application process. I go to apply. I go down there and I realized, oh, I can't type fast. I never learned how to type without looking. And the typing number wasn't very high. If I did my little chicken pecking, I could get to the typing limit. But the way ecom works is that you have to be able to type a lot of different types of sentences and words and lots of punctuation. And that just wasn't very quick with my style. So I failed the application in the typing stage, which sucks. I really should have known better. But then I went home and went, okay, well, I'll keep working at the cafe, just less days a week. And my dad said, well, why don't you apply for the VPD's civilian side where you do transcribing their police reports and stuff. But again, you have to have high typing, but the pay was really good. And I was super excited because my dad knew someone in the company in that side, and it was a really good reference for me. So I take I want to say 3 months off of work, really, almost to fully learn how to type, to just sit home and be like literally do typing test after typing test. And I learned the skill of typing without looking. Taught myself. And then I went to apply. I went for the interview. I got interrogated by a police officer, and she literally just said, I passed the typing test. And the reason that I didn't get the job was, she's like, you passed everything. You're qualified. But we've had people apply with master's degrees, and it will look like literally nepotism. Like it's not, it doesn't make sense literally to hire you over these people. I hope you understand. And I was like, all right, Lord, what is going on? I keep trying to make money and you keep saying no. And so I'm just going to keep doing this coffee shop thing. I go to do security after that, downtown east side, to try and get more policing kind of experience, I guess. I did undercover, loss prevention. I did safety in Gastown. Really great experience, but it showed me, no, you're not built to be a police officer. As I was arresting people for stealing, I was feeling so sorry for them while I did my job.
Yeah.
And I would sit in the back room and be like, why are you stealing? And they're sharing things like, oh, I'm addicted to heroin and I'm starting to come off. I need drugs. And I'm like, my heart's breaking for them. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if I'm cut out for a job where I'm punishing people.
Yeah.
It is keeping people safe. Absolutely necessary. I just don't think I have I realized I didn't have the personality for that type of job, which was good. It was because then I went, okay, I'm going to close that door myself rather than running into another door full speed. And it was right around that season where Joel had lunch with me and was kind of like, what do you want to do with your life? I'm like, Joel, I don't know. I run into so many doors. My nose is flat now. But I said, I love the church. I love what I'm doing there. And wherever God takes me, I'm going to be a part of it. And then that's when he was kind of like, well, I've been meaning to ask. I was like, oh, and it was awesome.
Okay.
It's perfect.
But what do you learn from all this closed door or failure in a sense? Like, the thing that you tried just didn't work out. What do you learn from it? I
learned a lot of weird skills that, I can now typing, like, which actually transfers over to a lot of things, like a lot of jobs. Like, at the church, I can type to someone's talking to me about something and I'm taking notes. I can just look at them and engage with them and type, writing sermons and stuff. I was a lot quicker. It did help. It changed my ability to write things fast and in a coherent way. In security, I learned literally how to be a good security person. I learned takedowns. And so in emergency situations, it made me more calm, more confident that if someone's coming to fight me, I know how to de-escalate the situation, when to remove myself from the situation, and when to kind of engage. Yeah. And so that's transferred over to a lot of, areas in the church even where somebody comes in and they're throwing a fit. Oh, I forgot to say in there, I also had a season where I worked with kids with special needs. That was after I started the church. So I was working at the church and with kids with special needs. And that job taught me, incredible skills in how to talk to people who are neurodivergent, how to support them, how to understand them. Gave me a real heart for people who have struggles with that type of thing, physical or mental disability. And then I when I'm at church and I see someone who has a disability or is responding, maybe it's they're angry at somebody, I can support them in coming down, de-escalating, because I learned the skills of, okay, when someone with autism is very upset, what are the steps we take to make them more regulated, not make them more angry? Or a lot of people panic and they make it worse because they don't know what to do. And so a lot of these weird skills I learned, honestly, they were gifts, and they still are gifts. I still I'm appreciative for them. They've helped me in so many different areas of life. And even when I was helping out with the youth group and stuff, a lot of neurodivergent kids, whether they have fetal alcohol or ADHD or autism, I was equipped to see them with compassion, not be kind of annoyed or confused or why is that kid acting like that? But to actually go, oh, I understand now. I can help them. So it created a lot of compassion in me. And I think it humbled me a lot to run into a lot of closed doors. I think it taught me life is not so straightforward. It's definitely not black and white. But each time I hit the wall or the door, I'd have a short time of disappointment, but it would then lead me to, I was pretty quick to go pivot something different because I never wanted to just stand still. For me, I felt like if I'm not, this was almost like how I learned how to hear God's voice early on is okay, God, if you're inviting me into this direction, continue to make the way. And if you're not, close the door fast. So I don't, I don't spend too much time, running this way. So I really learned how to see the things I loved and see the things I didn't love. I learned what has longevity in my life and what doesn't. And
know how to face it too,
for sure.
Just pick up yourself and just go some other direction and you think it's okay. So finally, I think eventually, Pastor Joe County, at that time he was the executive pastor, right, of Northside Church, actually. So you mentioned a little bit, but exactly what did happen? What did he say to you, actually?
Yeah, it's a bit of a. It was a long time ago, so it's a little bit of a. It was over 8 years ago, because I did it for a year as a volunteer. So I ran the worship program at our church, and I think that was the year before Joel had lunch with me. And so because we had a worship director who was worship, he was in charge of tech, and he was in charge of all video editing, media, website. So he was way too overwhelmed. And I had been serving in the ministry for years, since I was in grade 10. I had been leading a team myself for quite some time. And so I think they were like, well, can you handle this? You're quite young. I think I was, oh man, how old was I? I was quite young. And they were like, can you handle this like as a volunteer, so we don't put our eggs in that basket yet? And I loved it, and I did a good job, I think. And so that's why I think Joel approached me, because I think we had this kindred spirit, like the way we love to worship, the way we cared for the people to encounter, to know God, whether it was through the lyrics or through a personal experience with Jesus in that time. We both had the same desire. And so I think he saw this similarity between us, this unity. And he was like, I'd love to see you step into this in an official capacity in which you can put even more focus than you already are. Because again, most of my spare time was spent serving at church. And so for him to give me a paid position, it allowed me to have dedicated hours during the week where nothing else is on my mind but supporting and growing and helping the worship ministry at Northside, at the time called Northside, now Dwelling Place, to be healthy and to be a great place that has become today.
I know you're still relatively young. Actually, you're very young. My point of view.
Oh yeah,
wow, you're really
I know. I feel old.
I thought you were a little bit older, but I'm like, oh no, I'm younger than that. Oh no. But how did you view your experience as a worship director? In your opinion, what's the meaning of a career? You always say like the worship director is not really a career, because you also do other things. But how do you view your experience as a worship director? What does it give you, you think, for all this year?
Well, it's not, the one thing it doesn't do is give you a lot of money. Serving in the church it is a sacrifice in some regards, but it does, there was a sense of purpose that I can't really describe, that you can have anywhere, but it depends on, I think, if you feel called, or to use different language, like you find like your values align, you feel like you have a voice, and you feel like the reward, whatever it is able to sustain you. And so for me, the reward, or the like value in being a worship pastor and worship director, was really I got to spend so much time with people I love. And so relationships were a huge reward. Fulfillment in like pursuing God, and alignment of my values, like with people in leadership. I felt really like, okay. And even that my voice was heard. Like if I suggested, hey, we should probably think about doing this, like having this kind of a retreat, or bringing this person to the retreat, I think they'll really benefit from that. Or doing this song, because I think it will line up with the sermon really well and create this kind of an opportunity for people to encounter God. And my voice was very heard. And so I felt like I belonged, in a real deep sense. And I think if you feel that way at any job, I would say like you have a decent, like you have responsibility, generally high responsibility, or, you just feel like you're not bored, you're not, I don't know. I feel like I've seen those people who look dead behind the eyes at, at a store, like where they're selling clothes, and they just don't like it, right? It's just to pay the bills. And there's like, they're half asleep while they scan everything. And then I've seen people at the same store who are so joyful to be there, and they want to help you find what you need, and they chat with you while you scan out, and you feel like that was a really positive experience. I think that shows the difference between where those three things are being met. And so again, like, do I have any responsibility? Some responsibility. Is my voice valuable? Being heard, does it change things or not? Or even just being heard, feeling understood and heard. And is there a reward? Some reward. Some people can do a job that they don't love, but they get paid a lot. I think for me, the reward often lies more in the philosophical connection and the feeling fulfilled in what I'm doing. But pay doesn't hurt.
Yeah, true.
Doesn't hurt.
Pay doesn't hurt. You didn't choose like what you mentioned. You didn't choose like a job. At this point, you didn't choose a job. Perhaps it's not the most financially rewarded. So how do you view money? What do you think is the value of money?
I think there's something about money. Sometimes churches will say, the root of, or people, they say the root of all evil is money. And that's actually a misquote of scripture. It says a root of evil, of many evils, is money or wealth. And so it's more of like you can do evil with money, but you can also do immense good. And so I think the thing I view with money is it's powerful. And you see that in the way that people use money to control others, to make decisions that they would never actually make if they were to pause and to think about it. Does this align with my values? Is this integral to who I am? But it'll make them do things that, they would rather not, or they never would have done, because they see this big price tag in front of them. And then just likewise, you see the incredible humanitarian efforts that money can help in, helping people who would have died from starvation or sickness live a healthy life, is beautiful. And so I would just say money is, the one thing money is not is neutral. The one thing money is not is powerless. It's powerful, and it takes immense character to steward it well, and to steward it in a way that is healthy and helpful. And I think for me, that's why generosity, it is like the cure to greed. If you meet people who are very wealthy, but they're very generous, you'll likely not see a lot of greed in them. But if you meet someone who's very wealthy and they struggle to be generous, I imagine I would see a lot of greed in those types of people. And then you meet people who don't have any money at all, and yet they will give, they will pour out, they will feed somebody even if they don't get to eat that night. That is beauty of money and wealth, that we get to share it with each other, and we get to pour it out. Whether that's a major sacrifice or a slight sacrifice, I think it's important to view money as powerful, and understand where our money goes, our heart often follows. So what we're spending on, whether that's clothes, very expensive clothing, that could be a passion. Maybe you're a fashion designer. That's a great passion. But if the desire is vanity, like people will look at me better because I'll look better. I would say that's a way that's going to lead you down the wrong path.
So ultimately, the important thing is stewardship. That's what essentially it is.
Yeah.
You feel like that's very
You can
important.
100% honor God, honor others with the way you steward your finances. That doesn't mean being unwise, but it does mean considering others. Before you buy that new pair of shoes, go, okay, I have 8 pairs of shoes at home. Do I need these shoes? If I want to get these shoes, I should maybe give a few shoes away. I should spread the love, spread the wealth before I indulge in myself, and really consider if I need this, or if it's a want. Not that wants are bad, but if wants rule our life, we're going to get into some sticky situations.
That's a problem. I know you will be have a major changes for you in the next year or so. So at this point, what are you looking forward to?
I'm really looking forward to I think a space, like an openness in my life that I haven't had for a long time, because I've been hustling, working 2 jobs most of my life, partly at the church and then partly enough just to kind of compensate to pay the bills. And I think in this next season, I'm really looking forward to just investing in my own education, my own skills that are hopefully going to lead me to a career. Hopefully it's not another closed door. I feel like it's an invitation from God. And so, but also outside of that, just the openness of my life, again, in a way that I can be more present with my family. Working 6 days a week right now does not lend itself to being super present at home. And that is terrible for me. I always say to my wife, I'm like, hey, if you start making more, I will be a stay-at-home dad immediately. Not because I don't like working. I love working, but because I just love being with my family and getting to even I have this friend who comes into my other job, and I used to know her when I worked at the coffee shop.
Yeah.
She's a kid.
Mm.
She's like, you should come to the mom and the parent like hangouts and the parent like gym time. She's like, come to parent Pilates. And I was like, you're hilarious. But if I was a stay-at-home dad, I'd be at all those things. I'd be at the gym playtimes. And because I just love spending time with my kiddo and with my family and with community. And so I think I'm really looking forward to rediscovering how my whole life can be ministry. Not just the hours I'm maybe at the church or in the church. I think that's something that kind of had shifted over the years due to different circumstances. But I'm really excited for what that looks like. And I'm really, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I'm kind of walking into it blind faith. I'm like, God, I trust that you're going to work this out. But I'm taking the faithful first step in this direction. So please continue to guide my steps. And so I don't really know, but I've already had really great encounters with people in my local community, Maple Ridge. And I'm really excited to see what kind of fruit and how those will develop over this next year. And possibly have some great lifetime friends from this next season too.
Okay. Hey, thanks so much, Keaton.
Yes,
thanks for coming.
A pleasure, Jackie.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.